Yeah.
All right, well, thank you everyone for attending the Startup Grind event. This is the first one of 2015, and we're very excited for today's host. Today's speaker, I should say. My name is Michelle Hepner, and I work for a company named Co-Advantage. We're one of the sponsors for the Startup Grind events. And what I do is I work with businesses, both startup, small, and medium-sized, and I help them out in areas including HR, compliance, and benefits. But I have a few announcements. For those of you who know Kim Patrick, she's the chapter director of the Startup Grind. She's not able to attend today, but she will be here for the next event on February 3rd. And that event is with Brian Dainton, and he's from Spreadfast, Math Relevance. And she's not able to attend today because any day now, she'll probably deliver her first child. So wish her the best of luck. Another announcement is parking. Make sure you get your parking validated with Ashley up front. And the format for today, we're going to conduct an interview, and then there will be a chance for all of us to ask questions as well. But at this time, I'm really going to turn this over to Michaela.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. So today we have, Jake Moilanen with Kixer. He started his career at IBM working on mainframes and supercomputers, including at the time, the 5th fastest computer in the world. He's now the co-founder and CTO of Kixer, an ad platform that generates installs for mobile apps like Candy Crush, Clash of Clans, and Uber. He was also the founder and CEO of CrowdIgnite, a content recommendation engine. Oh my goodness. All right. Yeah, the content recommendation engine acquired by Evolve Media in 2010. It reached 5 billion impressions on over 1,000 publishers, including Warner Brothers, Fox News, AOL, and Disney. So thank you, Jake, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us about yourself. Where are you from, and what's a fun fact about you?
So I grew up in Michigan, about 30 miles north of Detroit in the suburbs, lived there through all the cold winters. I guess the fun fact about me was if I looked out of my bedroom window growing up, I actually looked at Madonna's house where she grew up, and she was actually babysat me a handful of times when I was young.
Wow. What's your favorite Madonna song?
She did play her guitar, but I'm not a huge Madonna fan these days. But I'm not sure. Material Girl, is that a song she sings?
Yeah. Yes. I think so. What does your average day look like?
So I'm one of those crazies that gets up at 5 a.m., goes to the gym. I come back and I have 2 young kids. I take them to school. Then head into the office, work till relatively late, come home, put them to bed, and then go back to the office for a little bit longer. And so I'd say on average, that's what I typically do most days of the week. I have some exceptions, but it's pretty boring life.
So how did you get to where you are now, starting with college graduation? Explain the rationale behind each of your career moves.
So I was graduating in 2001 from University of Michigan with a computer science degree, and I just so happened to have some operating system experience, so I was actually really low-level kernel work. And so I was kind of courted by all the major corporations that had operating systems at the time. And they quite hadn't figured out that the bubble was bursting, and so they were still interviewing and hiring. And so I really had 3 options on the table. I was either Compaq to work on their alpha processors and their operating systems, IBM here in town, and then Apple. And I probably should have gone with Apple, given that the stock options were, I think, $10 at the time. But I elected to go with IBM, and one of the main drivers for that was going into it, I really wanted to go with the hardest job I could possibly find and really learn a ton. And I kind of had the feeling that I was going to get that more from IBM versus Compaq or Apple. And it actually did pay off quite a bit. I must say the mentorship I got and able to cut my teeth on some really, really tough problems at IBM was phenomenal, and I really owe a lot of my the technical ability I do have to the mentors I had from IBM. From there, I worked on their mainframe. So the PowerPC platform was as a model low-level work. So whenever they had a new server line coming out, I'd be the one that came in and kind of got it to boot for the first time to a command prompt. I did that with the Linux kernel and also their proprietary operating system called AIX. I did that for a number of years, and then I eventually progressed to working on one specific one called the JS20, which is the blades. And the blades started being put into supercomputers. And since I was kind of the guy that knew how it all worked, they had me fly out to Barcelona, Spain for a summer to effectively go bring up a giant supercomputer called Marenostrum. At the time, it was slated to, at least technically, it should have been able to get to the 5th fastest in the world, the fastest one in Europe. But the problem was it was anywhere near that type of performance. And so I was actually spending my entire summer out there working 100-hour weeks, sleeping on the lab floors, to kind of get to that point. We started getting close, and I kind of realized it was starting to be a big deal when one day these guys in black suits came in, and they took me to the other room, they sat me down, they put a phone in front of me. They said, give a status update. And I'm like, oh, not quite sure what to make of it. And the guy that was in charge of the whole project said, yeah, go ahead and give a status update. So I just start talking to this conference line, giving them my update. And they say thanks, they hang up the phone, and they leave. And I talk to the main director of the program, and I'm like, well, who was I talking to? He's like, oh, that was the Prime Minister of Spain. And so I was giving the status updates to the Prime Minister of Spain, and we eventually, it was a pretty crazy time. And we eventually did get it to the point where it was actually performing fast enough to be in the record books. And I kind of once I got done with that, I was like, wow, I really have kind of hit the pinnacle of my career. Going from working on some small service to working on having more compute power than all of Africa at my fingertips. And technology somewhat kind of lost its luster for me a little bit. It wasn't really much of a challenge. It was very, I think I talked about earlier, it was very deterministic. I knew exactly what, how it was going to work, and it wasn't as much of a challenge anymore. And so I kind of looked at it and said, what else, I love building things, what else can I go build? And the next obvious answer would be startups or a company. And I kind of thought, okay, if I want to go do that, what do I have to go do? And I kind of said, okay, well, I need two main things. First off, I don't know crap about business. IBM keeps you pretty insulated for anything business-wise whatsoever. The second thing was I need experience, and so I went back to business school and got my MBA at UT in the evenings. And upon graduation, I promptly left IBM and went to a Silicon Valley startup called Schooner, where we did high-performance memcache and MySQL appliances. And that place was great because I got to work with the likes of Facebook and eBay, looking at their internals of their infrastructure and really learning how you scale at a massive, massive scale. And even though we had raised $35 million in funding, we were burning about $1 million a month, and sales were not picking up very quickly. And so I'd been there for a few years, and I kind of saw the writing on the wall that we had about 10 months of burn left. The problem was my wife was due and in about 8 months with our firstborn. So I kind of saw this was a little bit of a problem. And so I'm like, okay, I need to come up with plan B here. So I started a company on the side called CrowdIgnite. And CrowdIgnite is a content recommendation engine. And so if you ever go to the bottom of a website that says from around the web, it has a bunch of relevant links to what you're looking at. That's a widget that we had created, and we effectively did a traffic exchange with lots of different sites. And I did it, in true lean up startup fashion. This is actually before lean startup. I'd done a bunch of customer development, and I pretty much had 20 sites signed up before I ever written any code. And it just so happened that I spent 2 weekends writing it, got an MVP out. It worked really, really well, and almost overnight I was up to 16 million impressions per month. And it just so happened that CrowdIgnite started taking off just as the startup I was at was laying off everyone. And actually the same week that I got laid off from Schooner, I got an acquisition inbound interest from Evolve Media to acquire CrowdIgnite. So it was very good timing from my standpoint. Unfortunately, it kind of fell through the cracks and didn't happen immediately. So I still had this my daughter due coming up here any day now, and so I took a job at Qualcomm to kind of make ends meet and for the meantime. And it just so happened as I had just started Qualcomm, I was 2 weeks into it. Evolve Media came back to the table saying, okay, we're ready to do a deal. And so I was in the hospital holding my daughter with one hand, And on the other hand, looking through legal paperwork, trying to work out the final contract details. That was a little bit of a crazy time as well. Ended up selling to Evolve Media and joined them as the managing director, so I effectively was running the division within Evolve Media. And I stayed on there for 2 years. And the main guy that acquired it, his name was Keith Benici. He's a corporate development guy. We'll come back to him in a minute. And then the other guy, he brought in a guy from MySpace to help get more websites. His name is Omar Nicola, who we'll also talk about here in a minute. And we, Omar and I kind of blew up CrowdNet to being to about 5 billion impressions or so per month on all the major websites you can imagine. We were on all the AOL sites, all the Warner Brothers sites. We were all over the place. And just to give a sense of business-wise how large it was, we were doing about 5 billion impressions or so per month. One of our main competitors was Gravity, who was doing about 900 million. So they're about about a fifth of our size. Gravity sold to AOL for $90 million. And unfortunately, I did not see anywhere near that much money when I sold CrowdIgnite, but it ended up being a pretty substantial business. So Omar, Keith, and I we worked together for a number of years. I said, if we ever have an opportunity to work together again, we're going to take it. And so Keith had gone to a mobile app company called Scopely. Omar went to another media company, and then I was just finishing out my earnout retention plan. And so we kind of saw this opportunity within Kixer, where we effectively were saying, well, what if we did an app recommendation just the same way we did with CrowdIgnite, but for apps? And Omar's like, well, that's a great idea. Why don't you go do a Photoshop mock-up of it, and I'll pitch it to my TMZ buddy. And so I did a mock-up of it. He sent it to his TMZ buddy. And literally from the idea, we first talked about it did the mock-up. 20 minutes later, TMZ said, yeah, we'll put it up and we'll run it. And then, okay, that's great. We have our first major website. So now we need to have some advertisers. And so Keith had gone to this mobile app company. So he's like, well, Keith's in charge of user acquisition. Why don't we give him a call? And he was a little bit tougher to get a hold of, but we gave him a call. He said, yeah, exclusive on TMZ. I'll give you budget. And so he's like, but by the way, it'll never work. And so we got budget. We had the whole deal brokered within 2 hours of the idea without any code written whatsoever. And so I went off, and thankfully lawyers take a long time to get stuff done. And I hammered out a basic prototype, and it ended up working really, really well. TMZ is owned by Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers wanted to expand across all their websites, so Rotten Tomatoes, Flickster. And so we kind of realized we had something. So that's when we quit our jobs and kind of raised $1 million about February of last year, and kind of been steamrolling ever since. That was probably a little bit longer than you expected.
Just about kind of needed. So let's talk about Kixer. In a nutshell, Kixer brings an app install product to content publishers. So help me understand the app market right now. Who is the biggest demographic you seek to target right now, and how much time are people spending using these apps?
So right now, I think last stat I saw, people on average are using their phone and apps 161 minutes a day. And so people are pretty much glued to the screen. And so that was one of the impetuses behind why we started Kixer, was because people are pretty much a captive audience. As far as demographics, we work on a variety of websites, everything from entertainment sites to. Let me just take a step back and tell you the basic business models for what Kixer does. So, say you go to like a TMZ or a content website, you see our ads, what we call native ads. It looks like it's part of the website. You click on it, and it takes you to the Google Play Store or the App Store, and you download it. And whenever you do that download, we get between $2 and $15 for every download that occurs. And we do a revenue share with the website that they came from. And so that's the website gets that revenue, so that's their reason for keeping us up and letting us show ads on their site. So we have to work across a variety of different sites. And so the demographic depends on the site, frankly, because different games work for different demographics. Casual games works for pretty much, for typically, lots of moms and lots of people that just want to kill time. Like the Clash of Clans of the world are like the mid-core games. So the difference between all these different different type of genres is you have casual, which is people that play whenever they have a free chance. They have what we call mid-core, which is all the old console guys that used to play Xbox and PlayStation. And those guys plan their gaming around their day. And then we call it the hardcore gamers, which plan their gaming, or plan their day around plan gaming around their day, or the day around gaming. So and so each of those segments is very, very different. And we call the mid-core is typically a more adult male, and so that works well on different websites. So we have different apps that suit almost any market. And so depending on what market we're in, we'll kind of gravitate to advertising more of that app.
What is the first thing consumers look for or look at in an app? So if someone's wanting to develop it, what's I don't want to say the first thing, but the main thing they should focus on that will generate those downloads in?
Yeah, so I think this depends. So one of the biggest things if you're going to develop an app, and say let's stick with games right now, I think that the biggest thing you have to look at is really the basic equation of lifetime value, how much you're going to make over the course of that lifetime for the app versus the cost to acquire that customer. And the reality is an indie game shop or something that's just coming off the street is not going to be able to compete with the Supercells and the Zyngas of the world as far as getting into the top, into the top charts. Traditionally, historically, you'd be able to go, you wouldn't be able to develop an app, and the charts change every day. So you could get some downloads and get some type of viral type of, some effect on it. That doesn't happen anymore. The top charts don't move anymore. And so the only sure way of actually being able to get your app distributed is actually paying for distribution. And so that being said, if you have to pay for distribution to get people to pay people like Kixer or Facebook to go advertise your app to get the installs, that means it's going to have to monetize really, really well, or else you can have a lot of funding and you can take a lot of loss in. And so the first thing I would look at is how are you going to monetize your app? That's the very first thing. And then the second thing is, if you can monetize your app, you also have to be able to get users. So what is your user acquisition channel that is most effective? And so, that could be a paid method, or also that people have come up with very creative ways of doing it through SMSs, and there's a variety of different techniques. But I think the number one thing, if you're going to do anything at all, make sure it's a free app for one, and two, make sure you have a decent rating. If you don't have a decent rating, no one's going to download it.
Where do you get those ratings? How do you generate
The secret for getting a good rating is not having a great game. The secret for getting a good rating is to not have it crash. If you can do anything at all, just make sure that thing is stable, does not crash. You'll get a minimum of 4 stars if it doesn't crash and it works. If you actually have good game mechanics and is exciting to play, you can get higher.
Well, how many ratings or reviews do you need before you're deemed credible or deemed decent?
We've done some basic analysis on this, and people typically, unless you get to super large sizes, as long as you're over 1,000 or so, people typically don't really pay attention to the numbers anymore.
So you talk about paying for distribution. Well, we have to get funds somewhere. So can you explain to me the type of investors you're dealing with, and how do you value your company to speak to investors?
Yeah, so that's a tough question again. So getting money from investors, it's changed a lot. Before you used to acquire a lot of money, things have gotten dramatically cheaper now, and you're expected to be able to bootstrap your company very, very efficiently for a long time. And so even getting seed funding these days, you need a minimum of probably about 10,000 users. And if you don't have 10,000 users, it's tough to even get seed funding. Seed funding is not going to get you very far as advertising unless it converts well. It might be able to get the app developed, but you need to have a methodology to actually get distribution still. Really, if you want to get to a Series A, you need to have upwards of $1 million, a million users at this point to get a Series A funding. And so it makes it really, really tough these days to go out and have a startup solely based around an app, especially a game. You're going against guys that have just ridiculous budgets, can spend money on TV, and it's not feasible for most people unless they have a huge budget to really compete.
How did you meet your first investor?
My first investor in Kixer was an investor in Scopely, which was my current co-founder, Keith, was one of the guys he worked with. And so Keith had not joined the company this time. He was kind of advising us. We're trying to convince him to come on, and so he's like, our first semester was the guys that started AdSense. The guy, that sold to Google. Eitan, it was Alabaz, was flying out to San Antonio because he had some family in town, and him and I had talked briefly on the phone, and he said, "Well, I'd love to come up and meet you." So he drove up from San Antonio, and we met, and we had over coffee, and that's kind of how we first kind of started the relationship. And we kind of, once we fully had brought Keith on board, he was such a big Keith fan that he pretty much that one fell pretty quickly.
Going back to television ads for apps, are native ads being unsuccessful, or what is the story behind that? Is it more than just a large budget? There has to be some.
Yeah, so if you look at the guys that are advertising today, you have like Supercells and Clash of Clans, you have Machine Zone with Game of War and Kate Upton, but those guys have been around for a while. They've really, you've seen them been around for years. And native ads are still working for them. They are still probably some of our largest customers. They spend a ton. The reality is that they've hit this point where they're starting to get saturation, and they need to get new audiences. And what's more, they're trying to also what we call re-engage their users. So they've had so many users that it's actually cheaper for them to go and get someone that used to be a user and get them to start playing again versus trying to get a new user. And so the television ads help re-engage their users. The third major thing that it kind of does, the television ads do for them, is it gives them branding. And so as they can get more branding out there, it pretty much allows them to lower the acquisition costs for all their future games. So Supercell, which does Clash of Clans, they just came out with Boom Beach. And the fact that they already had a major hit with Clash of Clans, and people already know that brand, made the acquisition cost for all of Boom Beach dramatically cheaper. And so it kind of does three things for them, and that's really why you're seeing them pour more money into it, is they're really trying to develop their brands.
Do you think that there's an app niche that is oversaturated?
Yeah, games. So, I think I mentioned this earlier. The games, it used to be that any game could get into the top 100 list relatively easily, and so you could get some distribution just from organic downloads. The reality is that we're really seeing the quality games rise to the top. And so again, you're starting to compete with these very, very large conglomerates that have a ton of money to spend. The production cost for these games is going up and up and up. And so again, it's very, very tough for an average indie developer to actually make any headway. That being said, there have been some successes. You look at Flappy Bird, or you look at I think the other ones, Make It Rain. They have had success in actually breaking into the top 100. But for the most part, it's still a pretty difficult game.
You talk about new revenue, new inventory on your website to meet new demands from mobile app developers. What seems to be the most popular recurring demands right now?
So taking a step back, so the new demand, new inventory, that's actually referring to most of the websites that we advertise on. So again, a little more background. So if you look at most advertising, it's really, again, this is insider baseball type thing. I apologize for all the advertising terms. But if you look at advertising, it's really broke up into two main type of segments. You have your brands, like Cokes, Under Armours of the world, and then you have what we call the DR, or direct response. And those might be your traditional, you almost think like the infomercials. And so most of the brands pay for, they have huge sales teams that go out and really go and sell to these brands to get you to go advertise on your website. So TMZ has this huge sales team that's pretty much going out and getting all the latest movie to come advertise on their site. Direct response has a similar type of team, but what most of those websites are not seeing is they don't have sales teams that are going out and trying to get ad dollars from app developers. It just is not as cost effective for them. And so they're getting this new incremental dollars from us that they're not able to get from most traditional ad networks. And that's why we say there's a new inventory, a new type of demand. And that's really resonates well with a lot of the pretty much any major media company, because it's like, oh, this is incremental revenue that I'm not currently seeing, which is why it works so well.
Let's talk more about what you do at Kixer. Can you describe your no sales channel conflict and how having that conflict can damage app progress?
Yeah, so again, going back to the direct response versus brands, these guys have these huge sales teams. These websites have these huge sales teams that are trying to go sell to Coke and Pepsi. And if we come in as a new ad network and say, we're going to advertise on your website, we might show if they're advertising Coke, we show a Pepsi ad. Their sales team is going to be really, really mad because they just effectively blew the sale. And so apps don't traditionally have any type of conflict with Coke and Pepsi of the world. There's no sales channel conflict. And so that makes our job dramatically easier to go get distribution and get our ads up on lots of different sites.
So let's talk revenue outside of investors. What is the best approach in your opinion? You have your cash stake oriented apps, you have free downloads, or you have a pro version, $1.99. What do you think deters consumers and attracts consumers price-wise?
Yeah, so I think it's really early to say on the stake methodologies. So like the diet bet or packed, I think is another one. And so I'm not quite sure how that's going to all pan out yet. But if you look at really what's in the top 20 list of the top grossing apps, you see a very common theme. They're all freemium, or they have in-app purchases. So you pretty much can download them, and then their game mechanics within these games are so good at this point that they cause you to go and do in-app purchases. And they really have refined this to the point where that it's almost a science, and they have some very, very advanced machine learning behind them to actually figure out when's the best time to go show your power up, or to go get you to get more gems. And so they've gotten very, very good at that. And so even if you look at like Angry Birds, which is probably you traditionally remember as being like $1 or $2 to download, even Angry Birds, all the newest versions are going to a freemium model where they give you some version for free, and then you go download it, and then you have to go buy extra levels to play more levels in the game. And so you're seeing this trend going more and more, and frankly, Candy Crush is the one that really paved the way for it. And actually, Candy Crush is one of the main reasons why we started Kixer. Once we realized that these guys are able to really fully monetize and do a really good job of doing in-app purchases, said, oh, that's great. We actually it's a lot easier to get a free download versus getting someone to go pay $2 for Angry Birds.
So that's with gaming apps. Let's talk about apps that serve a purpose, if you will, other than entertainment.
Yeah.
Let's say Uber. It's functional, and it's been controversial lately when they rise the prices during holidays. But during ACL, Uber offered discount codes for ride credit. At what point in an app's life is a discount code financially feasible? Is it even necessary?
So, Uber's main reason they've raised, what, 3.3 billion or so? They can afford to spend a ton of money on user acquisition and just pretty much lock everyone else out of the market. And so they're effectively, we talk about the cost to acquire a customer. That's really essential for any startup. And Uber's just effectively, spending using that discount code to acquire new customers. And so they're same thing that PayPal did way back in the day. They were PayPal, whenever you signed up, would give $10 for whoever referred the person, and then the referee, the one that actually got the new PayPal account, also got $10 in their account. So effectively, every new user was costing PayPal $20. But that was, PayPal raised so much money, they could grow extremely quickly because of that, with that. And that's one of the reasons they were growing, I think it was something ridiculous, like 7 or 10% a day, is, because they were effectively able to, to pay for these users and get to a scale very, very quickly. That's a very much, a very reasonable way of actually of growing your business is acquisition through, almost, paying people. And so Uber, they're effectively doing the same thing these days, and they're effectively trying to get Lyft out of the picture by paying almost giving rides away for free for all the major influencers that come to South by.
Can you give us an example of a failed ad strategy? The best one you can think of?
Yeah, there's lots of those. One of the things that I guess the major failures you'll see that used to work really, really well but doesn't work at all anymore is people used to do what we call burst campaigns. And so the whole idea is what you would, this sounds bad, but they would go and generate fake installs and effectively would go and get your organic number. So Apple has this algorithm in the back and it effectively says how many installs you're getting per some time period. And the more, if you're getting a ton of installs very, very quickly through a burst, you're going to rise the ranks very quickly in the top 100 charts. And then you're going to get a bunch of organic, legitimate downloads. And so not all these companies did this, but a lot of them, were known for doing what we call burst campaigns, where they would use less, use some questionable tactics, and then they get a ton of installs that, and they effectively game the Apple system, which allows them to get into the, App Store top 100. Again, this is, the top 100 doesn't move that much these days because they have all these super big, hitters that are playing in it. So it's a lot more difficult to make burst campaigns work. And so there's still lots of these burst campaigns companies out there. I guess the other major, failure as far as ads is, I'd say, an underfunded ad campaign. If you don't have a ton of money to kind of start an ad campaign, it's going to take you a while to figure out what works. Even if you have a ton of machine learning behind it, and actually, you have, know exactly what demographic you want to go target, it's really tough to, to figure out what's going to work. And if you don't have enough money, you're gonna kind of, lose a ton of money very, very quickly.
So how do you feel about people starting small with social media or just websites, even buying Facebook ads? Is that destined for failure? Are those elements necessary?
No, absolutely. I think Facebook ads, for the longest time, was considered the holy grail as far as advertising and getting legitimate good users onto your system. You can do such precise targeting on Facebook that it allows you to pretty much expand very, very quickly. If I was going to start a new app today, and I didn't have my Kixer network to go after, I would probably go after Facebook advertising. They do a really great job, and you'll probably have the most success there. There's other social media campaigns. I've seen limited success in all those. I think I think paid is probably the most consistent and reliable way to really to do it.
In the past few months, what is the smallest change you have made that has had the biggest positive result? What was it about that small change that produced the large return?
So we have we do lots of A/B tests. We have a ton of machine learning to kind of try and figure out what's working, what's not. We did a change to one of our ad formats. We tried lots of them, and we just thought it was a small change that wasn't going to do hardly anything. We saw, I want to say it was like a 30% bump almost overnight when we went to this, and it was just a different layout. We had 3 apps side by side next to each other. We switched it to being a 2x2 type grid, and we saw almost overnight the performance jump up by 30%. And I think there's a few things why that worked. For one, we were able to take up a little more real estate on the website, so you actually took up more of the page. Another one, we actually were able to get 4 apps in there as opposed to 3. And another one, I think people are just used to kind of if you go to the bottom of a lot of articles, you see the tabula units, which has that 2x2 grid. I think kind of following that format made it feel more native, and so it was more successful. We don't have a whole lot of hard evidence, just a lot of gut feels of why it worked.
What advice can you give to someone who's not in the app market but can still translate this into their startup or their company?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest piece of advice I give to almost every entrepreneur trying to start a new company is really figure out 2 numbers: your cost to acquire and your lifetime value. And if you work and manage to those 2 numbers, you're going to be successful. And so I think that's one of the things that user acquisitions is the toughest thing. It's one thing to build value for your company. It's another thing to build and capture that value. Unless you can acquire users, and you don't have a plan to acquire users from the start, you're really not going to have a really fighting chance of being successful.
Who are you going to put out of business, and why?
So, yeah, I think one of the advantages we have is that we're a small, new startup that kind of under the radar, and we have lots of flexibility. That's the base. If you have an incumbent, how do you displace an incumbent? Well, you can't go head to head against a Facebook or Google day one. You're going to get destroyed. And so, how do you go about, displacing, Facebook or Google? And one of the things we've kind of realized is that we have some large aspirations at Kixer. And one of the things that we built from day one is we start with apps, where effectively you see an app, you click it, you download it. The whole life cycle, the whole the purchasing, the payment, the marketing is all done on a phone, one device. And that works really, really well. It's a great testing ground, and we can build our overall framework and pipeline pipes off of that, the app developer dollar. our aspirations are much larger than apps. We want to figure out a way to not close that feedback loop, but doing it for anything. So you see an ad on our app or on one of our websites, and then you go do a credit card transaction or go do a PayPal, and we can close that loop and says, okay, so and so just did an install or just did a purchase, and we attribute back what ad actually generated that. 50% of people's budget for advertisers' budget, they advertise on TV or on the internet, and they can't contribute to what worked and what didn't. What we want to do is actually be able to go attribute exactly what worked and what didn't. And we're effectively building up this giant, we call it a direct response, deep down funnel KPI type methodology that we can actually go and figure this stuff out. And we're hoping to unlock massive amounts of budget. And so our long-winded approach to our discussion of what we're going is we really want to start getting our tags on a ton of websites, which we've already done. We're up to over 1 billion today. And we really want to go after something that the likes of Google is not looking at. They're focused on desktop. We talked about the brands versus the direct response. They're focused on brands because that's where all their dollars are, and that's in desktop. Brands don't want to advertise this on mobile because it's too small of a screen. But direct response is great because you know exactly where you are, at the longitude, latitude, you know exactly what you've done, and you can do much more targeted advertising. And we're slowly building up our ad tags on a number of sites, and with the goal at some point to, that Google's hopefully not going to be able to move over as quickly, or the money won't be worth it for them initially, and we'll effectively be able to go where the puck's going and not where Google currently is. So yeah, that's our aspirations.
Before I open the floor for questions, I have to ask, what app do you use the most? Or what is your favorite?
Last year, this is bad. We ran a big campaign for Supercell and Clash of Clans, and I'm still playing Clash of Clans to this day. I'm hooked. Town Hall 9 going on 10.
Do you have any questions from the audience?
Yeah.
Yeah, really curious. What were your greatest influences in terms of figuring out how to work out the very early stages of the funding, as well as what you were going to do in order to measure your success?
Yeah, so I think as far as funding, we were very, very tactical and strategic how we went about doing it. We looked at all the major media companies that had exits over the past 5-10 years, and looked to see what funds have put money into that company, and who was the main partner that drove that deal. And we effectively built this giant spreadsheet, which we probably could sell for a fair amount of money now, but of all these different funds and pretty much the key people for each one of those funds, and pretty much where all the money is, and effectively targeted to go after those specific investors. And we pretty much got warm introductions to all of them through people we knew, and that's kind of how we went about doing the initial investor push. What was the other question again?
The other part was what influenced your determination of the metrics that you would track in the early stages?
Yeah, so for our KPIs, we were looking at, we looked at what our current bottleneck. So there's always one part of your whole system is queuing theory. There's some part of the whole system that is going to be the major bottleneck that you're going to have to optimize towards, because it's going to be the most difficult thing to kind of to get around. And so our bottleneck for us was inventory, as far as getting enough impressions on websites. And so everything we did was focused around how do we get more impressions. And the way to get more impressions for us was getting up on more websites, and to do that we need to be able to pay out higher amounts of money. And so we created what we call the Kixer feedback loop, which was effectively this feedback loop. It's very similar to like the Walmart feedback loop, that the more economies of scale you get, you can effectively drive down the prices, which means you can get more economies of scale. And so we tried to do something very, very similar. So effectively, everything we did was to effectively improve some component on this feedback loop. So the first part was, getting inventory. Then, more inventory means more data, which means better targeting, which means that we'll be able to get higher conversion rate, which means that we'll be able to get make more money per 1,000 impressions, and then this feedback loop continues again. And so everything we did was trying to enhance some component within that feedback loop. And so we built our KPIs strictly around all those different components within that larger feedback loop.
So it's been said that 50% of marketing works. You just don't know which 50%. So is that what y'all are trying to attack, or how are y'all?
That's our, our $1 billion, oh crap idea is we really believe that advertising is very archaic. You haven't, advertising started way back, the day on television where people were paying for per 1,000 impressions. And that's a proxy. You don't know, just because someone saw something doesn't mean that they're actually going to translate into doing a purchase. And so when we got to computers, it got a little bit better because the proxy got a little bit further down the funnel. It got to the point of being a click, and okay, that's what AdSense kind of pioneered. There's a click, and so it's a little better proxy for actually, for what's working, what's not. We want to move further down the funnel and get to the point of actually being able to have advertisers pay us when they actually they make money themselves. And the further down the funnel we can get, the more advertising dollars we'll be able to unlock. And so our goal is to be able to track from an impression, someone sees our ad, to a credit card swipe, regardless if that is online or offline on a brick and mortar store.
And the difference is you're doing that unilaterally as opposed to just on one website.
Correct. And so we want to be able to not only do it on website, on one website, but possibly doing it, we'll probably still be all on mobile and possibly desktop as well. But that's the ultimate goal. Yeah.
So you mentioned when you were speaking earlier that you had funding before the coding even began. Is that day done, or is it still possible? What does it take to get things so organized where investors are willing to give you money and the coding hasn't been completed?
Well, we had brokered a deal, so we actually had our first sale set up before we started the coding. It was after we proved out the numbers that we got the first. We had initial talks with the investor, but we didn't actually close until we had the first round of metrics that proved this was working. The biggest metric was saying that Warner Brothers wants to expand across the board, and that kind of was one of the major reasons why we were able to get funding as easy as we were.
So do you actively look for customers, or are they looking for you? Because I don't know Kixer, but what comes to mind is it's Google ads, and you're buying ads and then you're getting money every time someone clicks on it. So it's the same concept, right?
It's a similar. We get paid only when they do an install or they do an action, not when they do a click. And so. So are you paying pages so that you can have a footprint on their page? Right. So we pay we pay like E-Online, for instance, and so we effectively will have our ad slot, and we effectively have to pay to have our stuff advertising, show our ads on their site. Otherwise, they're going to take us out and put someone else that's paying more. And so we actually have two sides of the equation we have to solve for. We have to solve for getting advertisers, people that want to spend money, and also the distribution, people that actually have the inventory to actually go show those ads on. And so right now we're actually in a fortunate position where most ad companies, the challenge is getting advertising dollars. We actually have the inverse problem. We actually have to get more websites signed up because we thankfully are doing well enough for almost all the app developers out there that it's a pretty small world that they've come to us and they will actually, we're order takers. So we just have to say, okay, how much do you want to spend? This is, if you're going to spend $3 per install, this will get you roughly about this, this many installs per day. And so they can adjust their price based off of whenever one of our users does an install, they see how much do our users actually spend on their platform. And so they can look at the lifetime value of our users from our distribution channel and say, okay, I'm making $5 from Kixer users, and I'm going to pay you $4 per install. And so they'll effectively just churn margin that way. So for the advertiser,
looking for pages to be on.
So yes, our biggest bottleneck right now is getting up on more websites. Yeah.
Not to get too geeky, but how do you track actual installs?
Yeah, so all these apps, these app developers is probably one of the more sophisticated players out there as far as, they have something very similar to Google Analytics that's on all these apps that tell them they do fingerprinting. So we do a click, it goes to the app, the tracking service, and they say, okay, this is this user, and it came from Kixer with this tracking code. Then the user goes to the Google Play Store or the App Store. They do the install. When that user goes and opens the app, they call back to that tracking service and say, okay, this user just opened the app. And the tracking service, okay, this user that I've seen just open the app, who sent in this user? It was Kixer with this tracking code, and they send it back to us.
It's not a perfect, right?
It's not perfect. Android is dramatically better because actually Android now does a lot of this for you. Apple is really, really poor attribution. It's getting better, but they have plans to make it, to follow the same suit as Android, but they're not doing it yet. Yeah.
It's been the toughest talent you've had to hire. Is that here in Austin?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think tech talent's always a challenge, and we do about 0.5 terabyte of data a day of inbound, and that was back in November. It's probably higher. I'm sure it's higher now. And so I really consider ourselves as a data company, and being able to take a 0.5 terabyte of new data a day, distill that down into something we can make a decision on in a few microseconds in some cases is a challenge. And so we hired a variety of different people. We hired a bunch of data engineers for one, because we need to process a ton of data. And then we also hired like high frequency traders that are able to make decisions very, very quickly. And so those are tough skill sets to find. And so we also need machine learning people. So it's it definitely was probably our largest challenge.
What has the Austin market been like for you in your experience? What is the Austin market like to you?
From from hiring or from like investors or hiring? It's still a challenge. I think there's lots of good. I mean, if you're a good developer, you can walk down the street and get a job without a problem. There's lots of I'd say not great developers or very junior developers, and and they're still kind of learning, finding their way. But we're because our systems are so complicated, we have to really hire like some very, very senior people. So that's still tough. We spent, I think, 7 months trying to hire one position. We finally hired it in December, and it was a huge, huge challenge. From the investment side, I think the Austin market is still tough depending on what area you're in. If you are doing, so typically how, we raise money out of LA and Silicon Valley. Our major investors were AdSense, the guys that started AdSense, and then Lowercase Capital with Chris Sacca. Chris Sacca, if you guys don't know him, he was the largest shareholder of Twitter. And so those are our two major investors, but they were, we had a pretty easy time with them, but we had kind of looked to see, I used to do angel investing after I sold CrowdIgnite, and I know from being on the other side of the table that there are more good companies that go unfunded here in Austin versus Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, the people are fighting for deals because there's not many very good ones out there, and that's why you're seeing somewhat of a bubble occurring in Silicon Valley. And it's actually getting even worse right now because everyone knows that there's a bubble, and so they're effectively trying to these VCs are effectively trying to use up their entire fund, and so they can go raise another fund and be able to ride out the bubble burst. And so you're seeing inflated valuations dramatically right now. You're not seeing that as much here in Austin. There's not as much competition for the hot deals, not like it is in Silicon Valley. And so it's definitely different. I'd say on average, I think the rule of thumb in Austin is if you want every $100,000 you want to raise, it's going to take you a month. You go to Silicon Valley, we raised our full million in about a month. So it's quite a bit different.
You said you were an angel investor?
Yeah.
How old are the companies that you invest in, or what is the youngest you will go?
I have done a handful. I've done 3 total, and I've done one was extremely early stage, didn't even have a product, it was just a proof of concept. That one actually was my most successful one. That one had to exit to XO Group within a pretty quick turnaround. I had a few other ones that were relatively early stage that I thought I could help out quite a bit. And I typically look for the early stage stuff where I can help out because I'm effectively able to take a much larger percentage of the company and get a much better valuation. And if I think I see something in that company. That being said, I'm going to start going to probably later stage stuff here.
What did that company have, the one that was promising but soared with it?
I think I invested in that company initially because all my companies I invest in is because of the founder. I think founders, and I think having good founders, they'll figure out a way. This one in particular had a really good vision for where they wanted to go. They're effectively doing PayPal for weddings, and so they actually had done a ton of great customer development work, and had the founder was outstanding. And so I really was just betting on him, and that was the major thing I was betting on for that.
Have you ever said no to a client?
All the time.
Or a picture, just
Yeah, I mean,
go to someone else?
So we always get asked to do some very unusual type integrations and deals, and one of the largest challenges, I always consider myself really a product guy and figuring out how to really marry product requirements with what the business objectives are. And clients always want you to do some one-off thing for them, and that might be good for that one client, and maybe it's a big enough deal that you'll consider it, but you accumulate so much technical debt by doing these one-offs that it makes your whole platform very, very difficult to do anything with in the future. And so we've tried staying laser focused right now, and thankfully we have, we're growing fast enough that we can stay laser focused and not really deviate much. And this really allowed us to kind of, we say no a lot actually, quite frankly, we probably, at least every day.
How do you manage the duality between driving new business and overseeing daily operations?
That's the challenge. We added in, learned a few things from CrowdIgnite, and one of the largest things I learned was really that developers need, I still do a ton of development, but they need uninterrupted time to be able to do good work. And so what we did, first off, I tried keeping the whole business unit away from all the developers in general as much as I can, and that goes a long way as I try being the buffer between them. But the other thing we do is we black out days. And so effectively every Tuesdays and Thursday, the business unit guys are not allowed to contact me except for between the hours of 12 and 1 for any reason unless it's an emergency. And that allows me to get stuff done and without having to, without having to constantly be pulled in a different direction. And we try doing that even more with developers. Like we have a big feature coming up here, and I'm going to try being blacked out for 2 weeks, which we'll see how it goes, which will be an interesting experience. Yeah.
Spend time both on the business side and on the IT side.
Yeah, I'm CTO, and so I've done up till probably the first 6 months I did 95% of our code, and then eventually once we start hiring people and going talking to the investors and flying out to meetings with the big clients, it starts eating into your time to go do development. That being said, I still probably do, I'd say it's close to 50-50 today.
If you sold your company today, what would the tone of the conversation be?
If I sold, we have really large aspirations right now, and we thankfully we've been in a position where we've gotten a number of inbound interests and offers already, and honestly within the first month we had one acquisition offer which was before we really developed hardly anything, and we turned it down. Because we really believe that we could go a long ways. I've always said I believe this could be a $1 billion company if we can only execute on it. And so, that being said, we're not going to be flagrant and stupid. If someone comes around and offers us enough money that it doesn't make the risk of being able to execute to get to $1 billion is pretty high. Let's be real. It's really hard. hopefully, if we fall short, then we'll still be at the 100 million mark or so. But if someone comes in and wants to pay far more than it's worth today, we would definitely consider it. But our mission is to really kind of try and really fundamentally change advertising. And until we get to that, it's going to have to be something that's substantial for us to really consider.
How did you figure out your valuation?
That's always an interesting conversation to have. So it depends. On our seed round, we did convertible debt, and so we didn't really have to peg a valuation exactly. We did have to have a cap on there to say, it's not going to get over X amount. And really the reason why we wanted that number to be as high as possible, obviously. Investors wanted to be as low as possible. So really the way to do that is to have multiple competing offers and really be able to kind of dictate your terms a little bit more than you might normally can. And so that's really, it was a negotiation. And we effectively, it's a difficult conversation to have. For our Series A, which we're in the process of raising right now, that one effectively we have a valuation which we believe we're worth and is aggressive admittedly. If we can't get it, then we don't need the money right now. We actually, the money we raise, we have the vast majority left, and so we don't need to raise, and so that also gives us a much better position to say no if we don't get what we want.
Do you have any more questions from the audience?
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, how many business ideas do you have in the back that you'd be doing now if you weren't doing this?
Well, it's always interesting when you get into the nitty-gritty of a business, you see new opportunities in different areas, and so there's a number of things that over beers we talk about, like, oh, this is a cool idea, and like, yeah, this actually would work too, and so it's that's always a constant thing. That being said, I think kind of what our fundamental mission and what we want to go achieve, I think is large enough that I think it'd be, we don't have anything that's really competed with what we want to do here today with Kixer. Yeah.
You mentioned that games were a big part of your business. What percentage, if you wouldn't mind sharing, and then what are the other top 3 categories in no particular order?
Yeah, sure. So we initially started 100% games, and we've been wanting to diversify outside of games because we had this idea we want to do something greater than just apps. And so the first step is, okay, can we do something besides games? I mean, games, on entertainment sites are easy, but can we do things like, do a financial app, or can we do Uber? And so we've been slowly trying to expand outside of games, and now, I think we're 60-40. I'd say, 60% games, 40% is non-games, and that's mixed up, comprised of some travel, some financial, some dating. That's, I say, most of the list there. And we're starting to branch out and do e-commerce as well today. So we're actually starting to look at, we do have a few deals we're running already that are not apps at all. Yeah.
Do you think there's an industry that's hot for 2015 for apps? I know I've been reading a lot about healthcare's, the apps of 2015. So.
From what I'm seeing, and trends-wise, I haven't seen anything that's stuck out coming to us yet. For healthcare is a little bit different story. They're not going to be going through the same type of user acquisition channel like that we provide, so we wouldn't see it. I can't think of honestly anything I've seen in particular that really stands out that I've seen. I think the biggest thing as far as games that we're seeing, there's a huge trend right now where people are trying to use IP to help improve their user acquisition. So you look at every single major movie that's coming out now, like the Big Hero 6, Frozen, Book of Life. All these are using IP to help make it much easier to get installs and lower the cost of install. So you're seeing a bunch like Glue's coming out with a ton of new ones in the future, like James Bond. They just came out with RoboCop, and Kim Kardashian's got paid $85 million. So people are using like these known commodities to go help drive installs, and it works. It really works extremely well. We care about not only how much we get paid per install, but what the conversion rate is. And the apps that have IP. Like we're now running Looney Tunes, one of our lowest paying per install apps out there, but it's one of the highest converting ones and actually outperforms a number of the super high performing, high paying ones. And so, I think IP is kind of where we're seeing a huge push towards.
Are there any education apps or like Velocity or where you're trying to train your brain? Is that a dying breed if people are more interested in entertainment apps?
We haven't seen a ton of those apps. They occasionally come across our desk, but for the most part, we've seen a lot of Rosetta Stone. That's actually a very popular one. But there's not been a huge push, frankly, because a lot of them don't monetize that well, and they really need a high monetizing game. I mean, you're competing against like the Clash of Clans of the world for these installs, and that's one of the best monetizing games out there, and they really figured it out. And so you're really competing against them, which is a tough thing to go against.
Do you have any retail or product clients that are trying to enter those ads that come up while you're playing the app?
Yeah, I mean, there's brands still. I mean, so think about it from a brand perspective. So brands start off with like big screen TV or TVs that have this huge screen, and they're willing to pay a premium price to get on those screens. And then you get down to computers, which is a much smaller screen, and that's from their point of view, that's not as impressive or as a large screen, so they're not willing to pay as much. Then you go down to a tablet, they pay even less. Then you go down to a phone, which is very, very small now. These the iPhone 6 Pluses, we'll see if that kind of changes things. But for the most part, brands don't like advertising, and I'd put most retail in that category. Most retail doesn't do a great job of doing attribution as far as these students are coming from Kixer just did $100 of sales. They don't have a lot of them don't have a great way of doing that today, and so we haven't seen a ton of that yet. So that's what we're trying to change, though.
So expect to see more shoe advertising?
I hope so, if I have my way.
Do we have any more questions?
Is there a big difference between the tablet and the phone market?
Yeah, it's really interesting that the prices these app developers are so sophisticated. They have different prices for every geo you can imagine, broken down by specific. Is it Android versus iOS? Is it phone versus tablet? And now some of them are getting to the point of like saying, okay, for this specific model of Android, we're willing to pay $2, but this other one we're willing to pay $2.10. But unless it's if it's in like China, they're willing to pay 80 cents. And so they're super sophisticated as far as what they're willing to pay. And so there's a huge disparity. In general, I'd say that that it depends on the app. Some apps do much better on tablet, and some apps do much better on phone. So it's really app dependent. Like Uber does much better on a phone than a tablet.
Any more questions? Will you be able to answer any more?
Absolutely.
No? All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming to Startup Grind. We are here once a month. If you're not on our mailing list, please drop your business card with us, and we'll keep you updated on our next event. Good to see you guys.
Great job on the questions.
Thank you.
That's good. Yeah.
Thank you.